Obama supporters say health care is a human right. Says who? I'm Ann-Marie.
I'm Sunny.
I'm Gina.
And today we're once again with Tea Party Patriot co-founder Jenny Beth Martin. And we'll be talking about the recent Washington, D.C. Road to Repeal rally on this episode of PolitiChicks. So we are here with Jenny Beth Martin. Jenny Beth, that was the most amazing event, and even though it was pouring rain the whole day, and all of us were wet, it didn't keep thousands of people. What was the final count?
We had around 5,000 people, and the rain didn't hold them back.
Wow. So what made you create this event? What was your goal?
Well, the goal was to make sure that so many people had stood up against the health care legislation as it was being passed through Congress, and we wanted to make sure they had the opportunity to stand up again and let the Supreme Court know that people are still outraged by this legislation and that we want it repealed, and we want the court to do the right thing and rule it unconstitutional, and we want Congress to do the right thing and repeal it completely.
And you ladies gave amazing speeches. And Sunny, why are you were out there with your daughter in the rain. Why are you so passionate about ending Obamacare?
Well, first, when you get Jenny Beth call you and tell you she wants you to participate, you show up.
Yeah, what time?
And then when you're educating your daughter about freedom and about the country and about how it's one generation away from, freedom is just one generation away from being extinguished. So when you have your child, you make sure you bring them to an event like this. But most of all, it's going to change the relationship between the federal government and we the people, and they cannot force us to participate in commerce. And if we do not stand up at this point, then they're going to just keep pushing the line back to the point where we can't stand up at all. So I think it's very important that we all stand up to fight and make sure that Obamacare is repealed.
Right, absolutely. And Gina, you told the most beautiful story about your child and how you're going to be affected. Can you share that with us, why you're personally involved with this?
I can't help but every time I think about Obamacare, I picture my little son's face. We adopted him. He has Down syndrome. He was on a feeding tube, had failure to thrive, had 10 different medical diagnoses in addition to the Down syndrome, and that was when we went to get him. But all it took was holding him for a couple of days and having parents love on him, and he was completely cured of everything with the exception of course, the Down syndrome, and which is just awesomeness, you know, in one little package. And so I can't help but think, Ann-Marie, that if Obamacare were in place, that we would have had directives from teams of people who would have decided his medical course. As his mother, I knew that what he needed was to be held. And if I hadn't been trusted with that instinct, if a panel had decided that for me, would he have even received any care? He wasn't expected to live. So I can't help but think of those horrors when I think of Obamacare.
Jenny Beth, I know that Gina's daughter is working on something for Tea Party students. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Tea Party students, my daughter works with Tea Party youth, and they work in collaboration with Tea Party students. And together, I think, basically, and Jenny Beth can talk about this as well, but I think the basic idea is sending a message to this administration and to the American people that they don't want to be taxed forward. They don't have any voting ability right now, at least the ones underneath 18, certainly didn't have any ability to do anything when Obamacare passed, and yet they're the ones who will be paying the bill for the decisions that this government makes right now. I think it's a fair question to ask by the youth.
Wow.
Yeah, and so Tea Party students, they have a suggested amendment to the Constitution. I don't have the exact wording, but it roughly says that Congress cannot pass bills that are going to cause so much debt that future generations are being taxed to sustain that debt. And it makes sense. I mean, they're being taxed right now without any representation, and we're spending entirely too much money, and we're doing it on their backs. So I'm really proud of these youth and students, college, high school age, who stood up and said, you know what, we're sick of this, we're going to do something about it. And they launched it this week during tax day.
That is so amazing.
Yeah, really, I mean, the definition kind of Tea Party. You know, that taxation without representation.
Absolutely.
What is less represented than an entire generation of youth being taxed for what this administration is doing today?
And I think that that's what this administration fears the most, is that we're going to actually educate our children to the point where it's not going to work when they come in and say, we are supposed to take care of you, you are supposed to look to us for all of the answers. And our children are going to be like, no, I'm supposed to be taking care of myself. I'm supposed to be taking care of my household. And the more that we get our children involved and actually get them caught up on the Constitution, actually get them caught up on the Federalist Papers and what our founders actually intended, then big government apparatus is going to have a harder job trying to fool them into things like Obamacare. So
Exactly.
fight on.
Absolutely.
So where are we? Do you know what's happening at the Supreme Court?
Well, I think there are 4 different potentials that we can see from the Supreme Court. One is that they rule that the whole thing is a tax, and they just punt it down the road until the tax has been implemented. Based on the questions from the Monday of hearings, I don't think that will be the outcome, but it's still an option. The second one is that they let the whole entire law stand, and they rule that it is constitutional. I don't see how they can do that, but because I think it is completely unconstitutional, but that is an option. The third is that they pull back and say that the mandate is unconstitutional, maybe a few other parts as well. Now, if that happens and they let the rest stand, it's very dangerous for our economy because the bill will collapse on the weight of itself. They need the mandate in there to pay for it. So that's very, very tricky. And the fourth option is that they repeal the entire law completely. And if they do that, we can expect all those, which is what we want because of the severability and the individual mandate. It is not constitutional and we don't want it in there. If they do that, we can expect all those protesters who are out there in favor of the healthcare legislation to be out between now and November genning people up to support it and reenact it. And that's why it's so important. Even if they do that, we still have to repeal the whole law.
Speaking of protesters, oh my goodness. The day at the Supreme Court when the Tea Party Patriots were going to have a big press conference, Planned Parenthood, SEIU, they were out there in droves, just with their "We love Obamacare."
We love Obamacare. We love Obamacare. We love Obamacare.
And then we were on the side. We want to follow the Constitution.
We love the Constitution. We love the Constitution. We love the Constitution. We love the Constitution.
And all these really, what were you expecting those people to be there? They were horrible.
There were a lot of people, and I have three thoughts about it. The first is that it really was, when you stood back and you just watched what was happening out there, our country at her best, because they were exercising their First Amendment rights. Now, I didn't agree with them, and they didn't agree with me, but we were out there yelling and making our voices heard, and it was peaceful and respectful for the most part. There were some that weren't, but for the most part it was respectful. And that is our country at its best. That's why we want to protect the Constitution, because we can do that. The second thing is, so many of those people who are out there protesting, they don't even understand what the Constitution says. They don't know it at all. They think that the Constitution says that it will provide the general welfare for all people. I had someone tell me, yes, this is constitutional. The Constitution says it will provide the general welfare for all people. I'm like, show me that. Just here's a Constitution. Show me where. And of course they couldn't, because it doesn't say that.
And it would be Madison Care instead of Obamacare.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it just, the last thing is we have to keep getting our message out, because if we don't, we're in trouble as a country, and we're going to keep doing it and promote our core values.
Well, and I think the interesting thing to add to that, and I wasn't even there that day, but you called into my show and talked to me about it and reported on it, and I was watching you all, and I was so proud to stand with you in spirit, watching you, knowing that every one of you standing there were there voluntarily, probably missing work, probably paying to be there, your own expenses, your own hotel, your own transportation, so on and so forth. And in the very least, you know, the people that were there on our side are there for their principles. The people that were there on the other side were all paid to be there. They were paid to be there. And that's how why they come together and why they leave together.
That's right.
Yeah.
They were all given brown envelopes and they left. You guys, we have so much more to talk about this, as you all know. And I know this is, we can't wait to find out what happens. And got to keep praying that our Supreme Court justices are going to know what they have to do. And thank you, Jenny Beth Martin and the Tea Party Patriots for everything you guys are doing. And we've got to keep praying that our Supreme Court justices are going to do the right thing, and that people like Jenny Beth Martin and the Tea Party Patriots are going to continue holding their feet to the fire to do the right thing. And thank you guys for joining us on PolitiChicks.tv, the right kind of PC.